Hello friends, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Jamie, and today we have 14 books that I am wrapping up for October. Yes, 14 books. That is probably a tie for my most read month ever. 13, 14 is usually what I can do if I'm really pushing it in a month, and October was absolutely that month. Between readathons, 24-hour readathons, and TBR Harvest, I had an absolutely massive reading month. And speaking of TBR Harvest, a lot of the books that you're going to see now I have talked about in my TBR Harvest video, and I would really appreciate it if you go and watch that video because I worked really hard on it, and Leandra, the TBR Zero, the creator of this month-long readathon, worked really hard on that readathon, so I would love it if you could go watch that video, give some support to that video and to Leandra as well. If you did watch that video, there's going to be a lot of repeats, so I'm gonna try to keep it brief, but there are a couple books that I read that were not mentioned in that video, so there is definitely some surprises in here too. I'll also be doing my November TBR, but that is going to be much shorter because typically for me, November is a very up in the air month. It just feels very liminal, and I think I'm kind of just wanting to mood read after all of the very structured reading that I did for September and October. So I'm not really sure what I'm gonna have on that TBR yet, but I do have a couple things that I would really love to prioritize. All right, now that all of that is out of the way, let's get to the books. The first book I finished in October was Intermezzo by Sally Rooney. I do have a whole video reviewing this book, so go check that out for my in-depth thoughts. But yes, this was my most anticipated book of 2024, and how did it go? Well, it's definitely Sally Rooney's best work, but it's not my favorite by her. I think I gave this like a 3.5, which sounds like that's low, but the reality is, like, I do think this was a really good book. I just think that when it comes to Sally Rooney, it's really about her characters, and these two characters, they're two brothers who, one of them is a chess champion and the other is kind of like a really suave, savvy social guy. And it's about their interminglings in some love triangles. Really great character work, but at the end of the day, those are just two characters that I'm not particularly drawn to. And I think because of that, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, if you really get her characters, you're gonna love the story. If you're just about her characters, you're probably gonna just feel, yeah, about the book. But that being said, I definitely recognize the brilliance of Sally Rooney's work once again, and she just keeps getting better and better. She pushes boundaries, she challenges herself, she challenges you as a reader. So, I mean, I will always be a Sally Rooney stan. Next up, we have When You Are Engulfed in Flames by David Sedaris. This is an essay collection from famed comedic essay writer David Sedaris. I've read multiple of his works in the past, and was excited to get to this one mostly because I found this copy at a free little library, and the cover is like really cute. Did I like this collection though? I gotta say, not particularly. I think it's hard because a lot, you know, David Sedaris essays are all gonna feel the same. It's hard to remember if one particular collection stands out more than the other, but in general, I just feel like this one was lackluster compared to Let's Talk Diabetes with Owls. I really enjoyed that one, but I just did not really connect with this one as much, and I don't know why. I am going to probably listen to his holiday collection, but I have read already one essay from that. I read it in college. I don't know. I mean, like, if you like David Sedaris, you're gonna like this, I guess, but at the same time, like, I just didn't feel, maybe it was just like, if you don't have that newness factor of reading him for the first time, I think like the shine kind of goes away. So this is not, you know, bad at any means, it's just not a standout for me. And then on audio, I read A House at the Bottom of the Lake by Josh Malerman. This is a novella. It is classified as horror, but I did not find it very scary. And this is about two teenagers who find a lake, and they find a house at the bottom of the lake. And they decide that they want to explore it, and spooky things start happening. But for me, I don't know, this did not land. I did not like it. I get the metaphors about, you know, young love and kind of like first experiences. Like I get all of that, but I just don't like books that center teenagers. I didn't realize when I picked this up that this was essentially YA. I don't care for that. And I didn't engage with any of the characters, and I thought the spooky, like haunting elements just were not strong enough. And just in general, I was not into this. I don't even have much else to say. I just didn't like this. Yeah, I don't see the appeal with this one. And then I read Death in Her Hands by Otesha Mosfeg, my second Otesha Mosfeg book. And I was really intrigued going into this because I had heard that it plays with structure and that it was kind of a thriller. So I was very, very excited. This is about a woman, an older woman, who goes on her daily walk into the woods behind her house, and she finds a note that seems to suggest that a murder has occurred and that there is the body in a forest. And from there, she becomes obsessed with trying to figure out what's going on with this note, who left it, where's the body, what's going on here. So very fun setup. I was really into that. I also love the character voice. Otesha Mosfeg is always creating these crazy, like seriously nuts characters, and this is exactly the case here. I really enjoyed this character, and really this book just becomes her obsession with this case. It does take a direction that I don't think I was expecting, and I don't know that I would classify this as like playing with structure. It is certainly an unusual story. It's a different way of telling a story, but I don't think that it's necessarily anything to do with the structure. It's really to do with the character. This is a very insular book. This character comes across like virtually no other people. Like she is talking to herself most of the time. She's just a very isolated person. She lives out in the woods. And you do get this like sense of like building paranoia because she's just out there alone. And what happens when you start to let your mind wander and you start to go down these paths of what could be. And I did enjoy it. I thought it was unique. I will say that the back half was not as engaging as the first half, and I kind of wish it would have ended somewhere else, but I enjoyed it for what it was. And then I had 3 books that I completed during my 24-hour horror readathon. So please, if you have not already, check out that video because it was maybe my favorite video I've made all year. And I talk a lot about the 3 books here. But for an overview, I read Woodworm by Layla Martinez. This is a very, very short, I did think it was horror going into it, but I don't know that I would really classify this as horror. I think I would consider this like more literary. And it is about a grandmother and her granddaughter who are kind of trapped in this house. But it really touches on like cycles of poverty, cycles of misogynism, a community that has kind of outsed these people. And it really is, it's very enlightening. You get a very close look at people who are experiencing hardship, and there are definitely terrible things that happen to them, but it is more like real life horror, I guess. It's not horror in the way that I would think of horror, but very well done. I'm really happy I read this. I also love the cover. I thought this was very powerful, even in the short page count, so I really enjoyed this. And then I read Incidents Around the House by Josh Malerman, which, given how I felt about House at the Bottom of the Lake, I was very nervous going into this, but also excited. I mean, this is a child possession story, essentially, and it's told from the point of view of a child, and that is very interesting to me. I love media that is told from the perspective of a kid. Not necessarily teenagers, that's a big distinction for me, but when they are children, I do really enjoy it. And this actually worked for me really, really well. I thought this was pretty scary, honestly. It could have been also that I was reading it in the dead of night, but I thought it was, you know, genuinely scary. I really liked how the description of the entity continued to change and evolve, and I liked how it was affecting people outside of this child, which I thought was really, I just enjoyed that aspect of it, and I wasn't necessarily expecting that. It does go on for a while, and it kind of changes directions about like halfway through. And I think Josh Malerman does try to like create some conversations around themes and familial ties and relationships and loyalty, stuff like that. But I don't know if all of that landed for me, but I did think that the horror aspects definitely did land. And it's crazy because like in the first half of this book, it's like, ooh, just like a spooky, you know, fun time. But then it does start to get really real in the back half. And I really enjoyed that transition. I love it when books start as one thing and then they kind of morph into something else. That is one of my favorite things. So I thought that was really well done. Not a perfect book, but I did really enjoy it, much more than I was expecting to. And finally, for that readathon, I read Bury Your Gaze by Chuck Tingle. This book has been making its rounds this year, and everyone seems to love it, and I also enjoyed it a lot. This is about a screenwriter who is told by the higher-ups that he has to kill off his gay characters, and it's kind of a little bit convoluted, but when he refuses to do so, the horror monsters of his own creation start coming alive and coming after him. So it's definitely very campy, it's over the top, but the moments are fun. Like the horror moments are definitely engaging. I enjoyed them. A lot of commentary in here about the state of Hollywood, about you know, queer representation in media, which was really powerful. It talks about horror as a genre and how it works through traumas and gives people a safe place to experience fear. So a lot of good conversation. I think that's what Chuck Tingle really does well, is he's using horror and fun, campy writing to talk about bigger things. I think it was a fun thrill ride. I definitely enjoyed it, and I will be looking to read more of Chuck Tingle in the future. And then I read Goddess of Filth by B. Castro. I listened to this on audio, and yeah, I mean, this is a very short novella, horror novella. This follows a group of teen girls. They are Mexican American, and they are doing some type of witchcraft, and they accidentally, or maybe intentionally, whatever you think, they conjure a entity, and it ends up possessing one of their friends. But this entity is the Goddess of Filth, and this entity is really focused on femininity, on women's power, and this book is again focused on teenagers, and again it is a lot about kind of a sexual awakening, young personal discovery, things of that nature. I didn't mind this. It is a lot about, you know, like girlhood, that transition between child and adult, and it does focus on a Mexican legend, so I liked that element of it. I loved that, like, the spirituality element was really interesting. The horror was not super strong, but it was there in times. My main issue with this book, and I think this is just the case with V. Castro as an author, is that she's not afraid to write some very vulgar scenes, very descriptive, and honestly, like, kind of disgusting, which I should have known when the title is Goddess of Filth. I should have picked up on that, but I think because of those elements, I didn't love it, but I did love, you know, the concept, the idea. I thought the execution was fine with those elements. I just don't think that V. Castro is the author for me. So I was editing this video and I realized that, again, I forgot to talk about In the Company of Witches, which is ironic because I completely forgot to talk about it in my TBR Harvest video too. So, well, I talked about it a little bit, but I forgot to finish what my thoughts were on it. In the Company of Witches, I read it on audio. Very cute, very sweet, cozy, witchy atmosphere in which some sister witches live and work together for like a bed and breakfast. So very cute location, setting, lovely. And then there's a murder. So that's very fun. I did think, I mean, I just thought this was okay, you know, like cozy doesn't always work for me. I definitely preferred A Dark and Secret Magic, which I will mention later. But yeah, I get the love for this one. I do think it's really cute, and I think like it's definitely worth a read. It just was obviously not super memorable to me. And then we have Airplane Mode, An Irreverent History of Travel by Shahnaz Habib. This is a book that I had been meaning to get to all year, so happy to have finally done it. This is an essay collection. I would kind of classify this actually as more memoir than anything else. And yeah, I mean, I'm sorry to say, but I just did not really enjoy this, and it sucks because I wanted to love it so much. But the issue is not so much the writing or the things that were said, really, but a general mismarketing of the book. An Irreverent History of Travel, I thought to me meant it was going to be tackling the history of tourism as an industry, which is something I'm very, very interested in because I love to travel. And I'm constantly looking for ways to educate myself about travel and just grappling with the reality of some of the harm that is done by travel versus all of the glitzy things that we see on social media. So I was really looking for an examination of the travel industry, and it does do that to some degree, but the problem is that the essays in here feel very non-linear, feel disconnected. The history is often like in little chunks in between what is mostly a memoir. It's a lot about Habib as a self-described third world country citizen and how traveling in her case is going to be very different than someone who is traveling from, say, America, or is an American citizen, I should say. And all of that was interesting. I do appreciate the perspective. I did learn a lot from this book, but I just don't think that the structure really hit what I wanted it to. I wish this would have been more like, I wish the marketing would have suggested this was more of a memoir, because it's not a very like just strict travel history, which of course, like in my nonfiction, I do love it when the author like imbues like personal narrative or humor or something to help kind of ease that like very dry fact-based writing. I get that, but the problem here is that it just felt disjointed. It felt kind of all over the place. I was like struggling to like find our like path of what we were trying to talk about, because it's kind of every essay is very long-winded before it gets to the point. So yeah, I mean, like some strong elements, but overall not what I was looking for. And then I read A Dark and Secret Magic by Wallace Kinney. I do have an entire review of this video, so check that out for my deeper thoughts. But this is a cozy romance. It has romance in it. But this is mostly just a celebration of Halloween. This is a witchy book, and I really enjoyed this. This is one of my favorite cozy witchy books that I've ever read, because it does have a little bit of a dark element, and I appreciated that. Magic, witch, Halloween, very Halloween focused. This is like a Halloween themed book, which I loved. I had a great time. And then I read Tomb Sweeping, a short story collection by Alexandra Chang. This is a contemporary short story collection, and it mainly focuses on Chinese American citizens or other Asian American characters, but largely is Chinese American. And I enjoyed the writing in here. I did enjoy parts of this, but I definitely kind of wonder where contemporary short stories really fit in my reading life, because I did enjoy the short stories, but I think I've just realized that if I want to read a short story, I would much prefer it to be horror or speculative sci-fi. Like, I just feel like contemporary short stories, it's just, I've not had a lot of luck with them. And it's not to say that any of these were bad. I think they were all pretty well done. Like, the writing I think is strong. But in my mind, I'm like, well, I would just rather have had, you know, a novel of one of these concepts to get really more in depth. I just don't know that contemporary short stories is really something I'm interested in continuing to pick up. I did appreciate the perspective in here. I thought a lot of the stories really worked, but as a whole, as like a packaged product, I just don't know. And also, when those contemporary short stories are only by a single author, I think that also kind of like lessens the overall impact of each short story. I prefer to read short stories from different authors under a similar, like a same theme. So this was not bad. It's just like, you know, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't extraordinary either. So I think there was just like not enough for me to cling to with this. I enjoyed it for what it was, but like, it's nothing really special. We're getting close to the end. Then I read The Hunger by Alma Katsu. I read this for the Backlist book club hosted by myself and Caitlin Bandy at Bandy's Books. You can find that discussion in the link below. Please check that out. We had a great discussion about this book. This is a historical horror following the Donner Party on their fateful journey, but it has a supernatural twist. And when I first heard that, I was definitely intrigued, but also wondering what was this going to be like? How is this going to work? And what I got was very surprising. This is not just Donner inspired. This is actually a very historically accurate portrayal of exactly what happened on the Donner Party journey. It really is a genuine historical fiction. She uses the names of the actual people who were on the trail. She depicts very specific events that actually happened. It's very dense with historical fiction. I like Alma Katsu as a writer. I think it was engaging the whole time, but I really wasn't expecting it to be so historically accurate and just so the details just to be so spot on. I don't know if the supernatural element really worked for me. I think just because the realities of what happened to the Donner Party were just so horrific on their own. Yeah, I learned a lot. I didn't know much about the Donner Party up until reading this book, and I have a completely different perspective on that situation now. Yeah, I was really impressed with this, but at the same time, as a horror novel, I don't know. I don't know if that really worked super well for me. And the supernatural element, I don't know. I just don't feel like this story needed to be made any more horrific. And I think because of that, like, it kind of lessened the value of both the supernatural scariness and the real life terror. And then we have Slewfoot by Bahram. This is the dark witchy story that I have been meaning to read for years. Finally got around to it, and yes, very, very good. I really enjoyed this. This is set in the 1800s, and it is about a woman who, her husband dies, and the town is trying to get her to sell her land, and she meets a demon figure called Slewfoot, and they end up kind of working together to save her from all of the horrible things that happen to women at this time period. It's magical, it's witchy, it's based a lot in folklore. You really get the sense of the folklore because you have perspectives of mythical creatures. You have, you know, multiple POVs of different forest spirits and things like that. So the folklore elements are really strong, very witchy. She does discover some magic, and that develops throughout the book in a really nice way. And this is just a really well plotted book as well. There is like a lot of moving plot pieces, and it really creates this momentum in the story. It's dark though. It's very, very, very dark, especially in the back half. Things get really intense. And I think it delivers on all of its promises. It's just a really well-crafted book, and I'm pretty impressed by this entry from Bahram. And finally, the last book that I read in October was Dark Harvest by Norman Patridge. And this is a short horror about Halloween. Yay! However, I don't think this one worked for me. I might be giving this 2 stars. Dark Harvest follows a dark ritual that happens in a small town in which every year all of the teenage boys in the town are first starved for 5 days, and then on Halloween night they are released into the town, and they are being hunted by this like pumpkin evil figure, as you see on the cover. And they are trying to kill him before they get killed themselves. really interesting premise, and honestly, like, I think that the plot, the setup, the ideas here, really creative. And the book actually keeps that up throughout the entirety of it. However, what really brings this down for me is that I did not like the writing style. I don't know, something about the way this story is told, it just feels like the action is like very far away. It doesn't feel like you're there in the moment. And there's just not a lot of tension for some reason, which this feels like this could be a really tense story, but it just doesn't, it's not. And then also, with this being about teenage boys, it does have a very teenage boy vibe to it that I just did not like. It just, I don't like how they talk about women. I don't like how, I just don't like the voice. I don't like the character voice. I don't like the authorship voice. I don't like the author voice. I don't like, it's just, yeah, I just didn't enjoy that. And then for some reason, the structure and like the writing style just made this feel at times confusing to follow and also just not very tense. So great idea, not the best execution in my mind. So those are all of the books that I read in October. We had quite the selection this month. And now let's get into my November TBR. I know this video is getting really long, so I am going to keep it brief. Like I said at the beginning, I don't have a lot of books that I'm calling out for this month because November tends to be very fluid. We do have the Goodreads Choice Awards coming out in November, so I'm kind of like giving myself space for when those come out if there's something that pops up that I really want to read. But I do have a handful of books that I would just, you know, love to make happen. The first one, that is Autumn by Ali Smith. I'm actually going to Savannah, Georgia for a little weekend getaway, and I'm going to be bringing this on my trip, and it seems like I can get through the whole thing in that weekend. So this is one that I'm prioritizing. I've never read an Ali Smith and I've been dying to, and I have been wanting to read this one for the past couple months, so trying to get this done. I don't know what it's about either. I have like literally no idea. I know this is part of a quartet of books that follow the seasons, and it's about England. That's all I know. Next up, I have two books that I really want to read before the Booker Prize nomination, which is happening on November 12th. I mentioned these in my October TBR, but I didn't get to them. That is The Safekeep by Yael Vanderwooden. I've heard this is fantastic, and it seems like it's right up my alley. It's a historical fiction, character drama with a twist. So I don't know I really don't know much about it at all, but it seems pretty short, and I'm really excited to dig into this. And then we have the heavy hitter of the year. That's James by Percival Everett. This is a retelling of Huck Finn from the perspective of the character of Jim, or James. And this has just been getting, you know, knockout rave reviews all year, and it's a big, you know, top contender for the big literary prizes this year, so I need to read this. And then two more books that keep showing up on my TBR because I have yet to get to them. That is Emily Wilde's Emily Wilde's Map of the Otherlands, the second book in the Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairy series. I wanted to read this one in the fall because it takes place in the fall, but I just keep not making time for it because, honestly, it's because the first one took me like a really long time to read, and so I'm just like, I don't want to dedicate the time. That's the real answer, but I'm gonna try to maybe read this like maybe over Thanksgiving week. That could be fun. And of course, once again, we have The Secret History by Donna Tartt. I still haven't attempted it, but November is the month. I actually watched recently my November TBR for 2023, and guess what? This book was on there. So let's try it again, you know? It's on the November TBR again. So I'm just keeping these at, you know, the top of my mind, but obviously with the Goodreads Choice Awards, who knows what I'm gonna pull from there. I'm definitely gonna be reading something. I just don't know what yet. And now it's time to pull another prompt from my TBR teacup because I completed my October prompt, which was to read a book with a person on the cover. So I read Slewfoot. Very, very happy about that. So let's pull again. Okay. A book with an animal on the cover or in the title. Okay. A book with an animal on the cover or in the title. I think of these, I don't know, does Emily Wilds have, oh, okay, this will work. Emily Wilds' Map of the Netherlands has an animal on the cover, so looks like I am finally getting to this book. I've been getting really lucky with my prompt pulls because normally I have been able to find a book that was already on my TBR and then do it for the prompt. So that's worked out great. I haven't had to add very many books to my already existing TBRs, so nice. That works out really great. There you have it. Those are my November priorities. Let me know down in the comments below. Are you interested in any of the books that I talked about today? Let me know if you've read any of them. Let me know if you've read any of the ones I have on my TBR. What did you think of them? Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. Thanks for joining. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, week, month, and year, and I will see you back here next time. Thanks so much. Bye.